Good morning once again. So I don't know how to tell you this, but chapter 12 is amazing. I know I've said that before. so we don't have time to go through everything. But when we started this book, I told you to pay attention for a couple of themes. I said, pay attention to social injustice. Yes, racism is a big part of it, but pay attention to social injustice as well. That's in this book, both social injustice and racism. I told you to pay attention to the treatment of women. Scout, of course, is both the old woman remembering and the young girl telling us the story. And so we're kind of getting a bit of both worlds. But from the perspective of a woman in the 1930s, keep in mind that a woman, Harper Lee, wrote this book. She basically experienced a lot of this stuff. Some people kind of wonder if this book was partly biographical for her. And then I told you to pay attention to education. That's also in this chapter. So it is just packed full with good thematic issues. So let's dive in. Atticus is gone. He has gone to, he's gone away for the weekend to work for the legislature. All right. So it's Sunday, and Calpurnia says, well, what should we do about you kids in church? And they said, well, we'll just go to church. She goes, now how about you guys come to church with me? And the kids are really excited about this. Calpurnia, she takes great care about getting them ready for church. And I absolutely love that on the top of page 118, it's like we're going to Mardi Gras, says Jem. What's all this for, Cal? I don't want anybody saying I don't look after my children, she muttered. I just love that. I told you she was like a mother figure, and she really is. And she looks after these kids, and she loves these kids, and she takes care of them. She's proud of them. All right. So they're going to go to First Purchase African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is the black church. So that takes us to page 119. Jem and Scout, two white children, are now walking into a black church. Again, this is heavy segregation. Blacks and whites did not mix. Although in the Finch household, Calpurnia is pretty much a member of the family, that would have been highly, highly unusual. This kind of thing would never have happened in any other family. All right. So page 119, they're walking in and they get a little bit of pushback. I wants to know why you bringing white children to nigger church. They's my company, says Calpurnia. And I thought her voice strange. She was talking like the rest of them. Yeah, and I reckon you was company at the Finch house during the week. A murmur ran through the crowd. Don't you fret, Calpurnia whispered to me. Stop right there, nigger. Lula stopped, but she said, you ain't got no business bringing white children here. They got their church, we got ours. It's our own church. Ain't it, Miss Cal? Calpurnia said, it's the same God, ain't it? Jem said, let's go home, Cal. They don't want us here. I agreed. They did not want us here. I sensed rather than saw that they were advancing upon us. So it is certainly not to the same degree that other black folks during this time and community would have experienced, but they do get a glimpse of this. And that's such a part of what Scout's character is meant to do. She is the sweet and innocent view of the world. She doesn't understand this standard or double standard or whatever you want to call it. She doesn't understand the racism. She doesn't understand why Calpurnia talks differently, and that's also a part of this chapter as you read later on. But as these children are trying to grow and experience, and they're still not quite into adulthood, they're still pretty young, but we get their sense that they're trying to understand. All right, so the chapter continues about church. The children are noticing all kinds of things about how the church is similar, but it's different. They say their pastor preached similar kinds of sermons. But we also get a couple more hints about how the African-American community knows Atticus. The pastor says from the pulpit, you all know their father. And then talks a little bit about Helen. Collection, meaning the money being given. So if you don't go to church every Sunday, generally there is an offering where people donate money to the church, and so they're taking the collection and they're dedicating it to Helen, who is Tom Robinson's wife. All right, which I love on page 122. The pastor says, "Close the doors. We don't have enough money. We need $10 to give to Helen." And I love that. I just think it's amazing. And he's calling out people like, you didn't give enough, and you didn't give enough. And Gem and Scout, they get a couple extra dimes and they put some more money in. They're really generous. I don't think they quite understand what's going on, but I love their generosity. All right. One of the themes about women, top of page 122. The pastor is going on and he's talking about bootleggers and alcohol and gambling and how you shouldn't do all these things. And he's talking about strange women. And it says all of this stuff is bad, but women were worse. Again, and this is Scout. Was she 7 years old here? I had often met in my own church, I was confronted with the impurity of women doctrine that seemed to preoccupy all clergymen. So Scout, in her naivete, she feels like pastors are preaching against women. At that time period, maybe they were. But really, the pastor's probably talking about like easy women and how men need to stay away from prostitutes. Probably more to the idea, but she doesn't get that. She doesn't understand that. She's just wondering, like, why do pastors hate women so much? All right. But even still, it lends to that theme of Scout as a girl growing up into a woman. How were women treated? Why do pastors preach so much against women? Is it fair? All right. Page 123, the pastor comes up to the kids and says, the church has no better friend than your daddy. But then we get some more of the social injustice. And they're talking a little bit about Helen, Tom Robinson's wife. And why doesn't Helen have any money? She could take her kids to work. And we realize that because of Tom, Helen is having a hard time getting work. And is that fair? Even if Tom Robinson were guilty, is that fair to her to not give her any work? Probably not. So there's some of that social injustice. We got some of the naivete. Calpurnia explains a little bit about what happened with Tom. And Scout says, what's rape? And Calpurnia goes, ask your dad. All right. And then page 125 has a whole lot to say about education. Calpurnia talks about her education. She talks about Zebu's education. Zebu, of course, is Calpurnia's son. We saw him both when he picked up the dog because he was the trash collector, and we saw him at church when he was singing the songs. So it has something to do with education here. And can you learn outside of the school? Remember, Scout hates school. But here's Calpurnia saying, my son never went to school, and yet he learned to read. Beautiful passage at the bottom page 125. It kind of continues top page 126. And then at the end of the chapter, they look out and they see Aunt Alexandra coming. So we'll see what that has to bring for the Finch family. All right, thanks for listening. Have a good day. See you soon.